Okay, so what have I done as an expert witness? It's been very interesting. So if you think about it as for the woman, I've had cases such as women where maybe preeclampsia wasn't picked up, so very high. So preeclampsia is a condition, a set of symptoms, which can lead to something called eclampsia, which is can be life-threatening. And so that wasn't picked up properly. And then in one particular case, a woman suffered with this, but also went on to have a stroke in the postnatal period. So that's an example of something that you might be looking at from the woman's point of view. From the point of view of the unborn baby or fetus, there's a lot of cases I've been involved in have been about fetal monitoring, so monitoring of the fetal heart during labour and whether that was done appropriately, whether the baby was delivered in time or suffered brain damage as a consequence of not having been delivered in time, or was that going to happen anyway, unfortunately, because of a genetic predisposition, or that the baby had intrauterine growth retardation, so was small for dates and not growing adequately. So, that would involve me. So if I had I have had quite a few cases like that with babies. But what happens though? What do I do with those cases? So when you get instructed, so you say, you have the details from the solicitor usually, saying, can you look at this case? Mum, giving a brief history around mum, and that you would have a look at that. And first of all, I've got to see, is that something that's within my remit? I don't want to be, it's important that as an expert, I am only looking and investigating care that is within my realm of practice. So I wouldn't be looking at, for instance, something that an anaesthetist did, because I'm not trained as an anaesthetist. That wouldn't be fair or right. So you get an instruction. Let's have a think about the woman with high blood pressure. Okay, a woman with high blood pressure. So it might be that she had high blood pressure that wasn't picked up, which unfortunately, when she started pushing, for instance, during labour, that then sent her blood pressure up even higher. And she suffered a fit because of this, okay, which meant it was very difficult to deliver the baby, and the baby consequently had a birth injury. So if I've accepted the case, I would then be provided with all the notes, and sometimes this can be all the notes that this lady has had throughout her whole life. So it might be medical notes, which, yes, I would want to look at to see has she suffered with high blood pressure before pregnancy. But that I don't, but you would have to sift through. So the first thing is to sift through all the notes and information that you come with, sometimes a huge big box full, as I'm sure you can appreciate. Although nowadays I am showing my age, because nowadays often this is on a file, an encrypted, secure file folder on the computer. In the old days, you used to actually have a big parcel delivered, big box delivered. And it wasn't a Christmas present, unfortunately, it was the notes. So I would look through the notes, see make a timeline, look at a root cause analysis. So be looking at what's actually pertinent to me, to that case. Then I would consider the time at which it happens. So for instance, as I said before, research happens, practice improves generally. So how a midwife might have practiced in 1990 would be very different to in a lot of ways to how they would practice in 2023. So by that I mean, now we would be taking different bloods perhaps to check somebody's blood pressure, and that would be routine and expected practice. in 1980 that or 1990, that might not have been expected practice or common practice. So it's only fair to judge a midwife or health professional against the practice of the time. So because of that, I have lots of textbooks and different uh, documents. So from NICE, for instance, National Institute of Health and Clinical Care Excellence, or the Royal College of Midwives, or from the RCOG, which is the Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists, not OBS and GOBS as they're sometimes called, from throughout the ages, so right back from like 1980s through to present day, so that I can have a look at the regulations and the standards that governed practice for that time. So my next stage, after having done this timeline and gone through the notes, and I might is to have a look through what was the expected practice, what should they have done, what would have been normal, not gold practice, but normal practice for that time. I probably will have questions, may have flagged up questions that I'll want to ask, or either the trust or the solicitors, or to find out. So for instance, sometimes I might think, right, I need the policy or the guidance that the trust has. So say if it was a trust in Lancashire or Manchester or London, I would want to know what their actual guidance said to see if that was correct as well, because that would have impacted on how the health professional or midwife worked. And it might be that that's to fault. Sometimes it's not that you find the professional at fault, although they are meant to be autonomous and question policy and guidelines of the trust if they don't agree with them. But it may have had an impact on their practice. So it may be that one of my recommendations in my report is actually that the trust was at fault as well. It may be so sorry. So then I may have questions, which would then I would have answers to, and all of this would go into my initial report. It's quite a lot of work. So once you've done your initial report, you would send that back, and it may be that the solicitors have more because you've raised questions that perhaps they hadn't been aware of, which is absolutely understandable, because at the end of the day they're not the expert. That's why they're instructing somebody like myself in the midwifery. They may have further questions that have arisen from the report that I send, and so that might mean that I'll answer those questions, which is a further either an addendum to the report or a further report. Then the next stage, and this can be months, even in some cases years after, may be then that you go to something called a case conference. So at this case conference you would normally have a solicitor, perhaps a barrister, and sometimes the parents of if it was a baby, for instance, that you had written the report about, the baby who may now be an older child, present. And at this conference you would discuss, and you would also normally have other experts, so perhaps the obstetric, so the expert for the doctor, the obstetric doctor there, or an anaesthetic expert, and you would discuss the case as a team. And that would help the barrister to understand where you were coming from, to put their case together, and then following on from that you may again make some amendments to your report, all the time acting as an independent person. You're not for one side. I have worked as an expert both for the trust and for the person who was bringing the concern. So working as an independent person, but yes, so that, and then in a few cases, but not as many, normally these things are settled out of court, or a lot of time they may be settled out of court, but that might actually lead then to you giving evidence as an expert. And yeah, that would be hopefully the end of my involvement there.